Hi David, welcome to your mix session. I've loaded up the project and only thing I've done so far is turned up the gain plus 12. I've just put a gain utility on there to plus 12 because the stems were quite quiet, but nothing wrong with that. There was not too much noise or anything, so it's fine. And then what I do is I have your reference on channel 1, which what I usually do with mixes is I don't listen to it until I've done the mix, and then if something is wildly different, then I might dial it back or bring something out, but I tend to not listen to it so that it doesn't influence any of my decisions. Right, so here we go. Should say as well, on my master channel, this is usually on my second screen, I'm just using this as an analyzer, so the EQ is off, but it just gives me a second opinion on the balance of the mix. Which overall is sounding pretty good, balance-wise. The low end sounds pretty tight. What I want to do is give some more mid-range, bring out some of the detail on the synth and any percussion. So for a little bit more presence in the mid-range, I first go to an overdrive, not with much drive, a couple of dB, and then turn it down so it's kind of level matched. In Logic, I reach for the console EQ, have it around 3K, just give it a little push. But it is giving it a bit of extra volume, so really we want to level match it. And then I would do the same with the other synth. So what I'm going to do is group those two. If I can remember how to do it, track stack and summing stack, synths, and then I'll just drag the overdrive and the EQ onto there. bit more depth.
Way to escape. There is no way to escape. There is
And
no way to escape. There is
just in terms of headroom, I would probably cut off those lows. They're pretty low down, but you may as well.
There is no way to escape. There is no way to escape. There is no way to escape. There is
So that's going to give a bit more body and depth to that.
no way to escape. There is no way to escape.
That's cool. So it's all sounding nicely balanced. What I'm going to do is go into the mixer and send all the tracks minus the grouped ones. So that should be unselected. Then I'm going to send them to a bus. 3 is good. And then I have a channel strip setting, bus compression. So I have a compressor which I can twiddle, and I have a dynamic expander. So it runs in parallel, and it brings up low level detail. So rather than squishing things when they get too high, it brings out things when they're low, essentially. But instead I've just put the send on the wrong thing. No send. So I should have been on there, bus 3. And that will do all the channels that I want. Turn that up about halfway. And then I'll turn the channel down. So I'm just playing with the compressor on the bus channel. So if I solo that, I can hear the groove. I can adjust the sidechain, so how much of the low frequency is triggering the compressor. If you just have it at 0 or whatever the lowest is, 16, and there's bass in the track, then there's no groove. So if we take out the sub, and I think we could get a bit crunchier as well. So let's add in a distortion afterwards. Have the tone right up, have the drive quite high, and then lower the output. So it's going to sound a bit nasty on its own. Very nasty. blended in. It's gives a layer of thickness and a bit of sizzle to the high end. It's just about finding that balance where it's not like, oh, what's that distorted layer doing? But it's just there supporting the mix. So on the hi-hat channel, or the rides and stuff, I would check that with an analyzer at this point. I've forgotten whether I'm mastering this one or not, so let me just check your email. There we go. Mix master, yeah. Okay, so if, as I'm mastering this, I want to check what the highs are doing, because I'd rather treat it individually in the mix than wait till the master and then have to dig into things that I don't want to. So I'm just going to use Soothe if I need to. To pick out any resonances that I don't want. So I'd probably check that with the EQ, just have a look, as well as a just heard a synth coming in there, which was cool. But I can't work out which one it is. Obviously it's not main synth 1 because that one has ended. Is it 2? It's that bit in the background, really nice, sort of slightly trancey chord element to the synth. I thought it was a separate stem, but it's in that synth, but it's great. So once I've sat with it a bit, I will mute the bus on and off. Sorry, you might not have heard that. To see what it's bringing to the mix, and also have a little look at levels at this point. The bus is adding about 2 dB of gain, but it sounds like it's adding much more than that. And that's just down to the compression, expansion and distortion on that channel. I think that's the trouble if you send the stems a bit quieter, is it's quite hard to see unless you really expand it out where the audio is, and that's really useful for me to be able to look around the track and the stems as to where things are. So as long as you've got a couple of dB headroom on the stems, or like the loudest stem, and then work down from there, I'd say it's better to send it louder, just from a visual perspective really. And I'm not sure if you're using hardware for any of these, but yes, there's a consideration about the noise floor as well. But as I said before, so if we listen to the synth channel, yeah, there's no noise on it. Or is it that you've just pressed record there? Not sure. Maybe the kind of fuzz and noise is part of the patch, but you tell me whether that's a soft synth or a hardware synth. Anyway, on we go. Yes, there is a little bit of a resonance around 8K, which I'm going to pick it out on the individual one. It's a bit of a, it's a fine EQ, but equilibrium is much better because it helps if you turn it on. Because if you right click on it, you can hear what you're removing. Let's go back to a louder part. Yeah, so it's that bit around there, 7.3K or so. I might just try, where's the kick? A little bit of overdrive. Again, hardly any drive. Output down to match. Tone fully up. That's just going to give us a little bit more headroom, and I'd probably do the same on the bass. So I'm getting to a point now where I'm pretty happy with it, so I will listen to the reference. 2 seconds. Why is that playing? Random. So this is where we got a level map. Almost the same. Yeah, so the difference there is the mid-range really. just going to pause there. I'll be back for another session shortly. Right, I'm back. Just been having lunch. So, I was just doing an A-B, wasn't I? I think I want to just pull down a little bit of the low mids on the... Then I'm just backing off slightly on the send, going from the synths, because I think the mid-range is getting a touch boxy. So then what I'll do is I'll go through each stem individually and see if it's, for example, in your mix, if this conga was louder and I can't really hear it in my mix, I'd push it up. But if it is a background element, which I think it is, I just leave it as is. Glitch drums are well cool. Maybe it's not glitch drums. Feedback. Noises. Yeah, so checking the analyzer for that one, you can see there's loads of low end. That's something to watch out for. So you see it's fine here, but then it's building up, and so hertz go all the way down to 0, so they could be coming right up, which is going to eat up headroom, so we're going to cut that off. I never want to go too high, because it looks like you could go here and that would be fine, but really you could end up taking away this depth and warmth and body of the sound. Love the sound design. Great work. Okay, so the mix is going to stay like that, and I would move on to mastering, but I always have a break between, so then I'll come back to this mix with fresh ears and do any final adjustments. Then I'll take it through to mastering. So I'm going to stop the recording now. Hi David, welcome to the mastering session. So I just did this whole thing and I hadn't routed the audio through the black hole interface, which then routes it to OBS. So I wasn't going to send you that. So I'm doing it again, and I'll just try and go through everything I did on the previous video. But obviously going to have good sound. Right, so I've got the pre-master that I've made from your mix, or the mix I did, and I've got your reference here on channel 1. So they're level matched at the moment. Obviously, as things get louder on the master, that will change, but I'll show you what I do about that in a bit. So the only thing I've got for level is this, oops, not that, is this Reaper plugin, which is level meter. It's got peak and then LUFS, short term, integrated, but I only use integrated. And I just tend not to look at it because my monitor controller is set to a certain level, so I just know when things are loud enough, and if they're not loud enough, then it might be that I go back to the mix. So if the compressors or limiters are having to work too much, then back to the mix. Anyway, let's go. So obviously we know what the track sounds like. We don't need to play all the way through. The first plugin I actually deleted when I did the first video, but I'm going to use it to suppress a bit of the mid-range. I've got a preset I've made, slow control, so when things get a bit too busy in that section, this plugin, Multiplicity, will take that pressure off the mix. So it's not like having a static EQ where that cut is just done for the whole track. This will just take it out when it needs it. So I'll just keep an eye on that plugin. I've got Soothe here, which I am going to broaden out for the top end because I might want to push some detail. So it's about suppressing some of the resonant bits in order to bring up the lower level stuff. I've got Equilibrium, which is the main EQ. This is what I do the expansion with, which I showed you in the mix actually. So it's got mid-side, or they call it center side on here, which center is the mono information, sides is the difference or everything else, everything that's out of phase. So if I want to do some stereo widening with the lower level details to bring them up, I can use this plugin. It's great for that. Then I've got Michelangelo. Let's just check that. And Michelangelo is a software emulation of a very expensive piece of kit. I had a hardware analog, yes, hardware valve EQ, which this replaced basically, because it could do so much more, and the difference in sound I couldn't tell. So this is a kind of very wideband mid-range control, which I'm aiming around 180 Hertz. So that's just to stop the mix from being a bit cluttered down there. Then I use the Oxford Inflator, which is an emulation of old British consoles. So it just fattens everything up, basically. I've got Black Box, which is similar job, but I don't like it as much. Then I've got the clean compressor, which I use. Which has got a delta button, which all plugins should have, and that just shows you what the compressor is actually doing. So you can dial in the groove. Then there's the Fairchild, which is another analog emulation. And that's more of a kind of tone compressor. Well, that's how I'm using it anyway. It just gives more warmth and cleans out the low mids just a little bit. Then I've got Infrasonic, which is by the same people as Kotelnikov, and that is just cutting out any subsonic stuff below 20. So you can look at the two signals being displayed. And so before, all that subsonic stuff is around -60, and then post this it's dropping off the scale. So it's not stuff that you'll hear, but it is stuff that will take up headroom. Then I've got a clipper, which is the best clipper for keeping detail. So when you crush stuff and clip stuff, the high end can start to get cut off, but this preserves the detail and it level matches itself, so it's great. So I'm just making sure they are not peaking the input. Then I can drive the cleaner signal in. So we're gaining a few decibels there, but transparently. Then I've got standard clip, which is another clipper, but really I'm just using it as gain. So if it's not hitting above these red lines, it's not doing anything. But it may just catch some stray peaks that get through the previous clipper, like this bit here in the track where something gets a bit louder. It might just take care of that if the thing before it hasn't done. Then I'm into FabFilter. Looking to do no more than 0.5 dB of limiting there. And then I hope to get kind of no more than 2 dB of limiting on the final limiter, if everything else has done its job nicely. I think that's sounding super clean. I was just checking what Multiplicity is doing there, and another great function of this plugin is you can hear the difference. What it does is that it actually mixes in a little bit of the dry signal, so you can hear the track, and then it also shows you what you're taking away in that band. So I'm happy with that. Then I think what I said at the beginning was the level matching. So what I do, obviously you can get all those plugins like Metric AB, and there's loads of different level matching plugins. But what I think is better is to have your pre-master with a limiter on it and get that the same loudness as the master. Then you can really hear the difference. Just need to pull that up a bit. Right, so there we are level matched. And that is that. Obviously that was quicker than it would have been because I'd already done it, just didn't have the right audio, so I've had to do it again. So that's the mastering session. What would happen now is I'd leave it and go and work on something else, then come back to it, make any final tweaks, then export, put it into RX, listen all the way through, and then it's good to send out. So sorry, stop. So yeah, let me know what you think of the video, and hopefully that's helpful, and obviously let me know what you think to the master. All right, thank you, David.